Yeah.
And as Virgin Earth, she has this kind of twofold relationship to the incarnation itself. She's the perfection of the old creation
Yeah.
as the unfallen earth, and so in a sense, true mother, mater, materia. But then she becomes perfect spouse. So I think many people forget the Virgin Earth typology and they move immediately to the New Eve typology, and then
Yeah.
they get stuck in this kind of what they call low Mariology, where you're thinking of Mary exclusively as her as member of the church, but not first mother of the head and then the body. So she's both mother as Virgin Earth, but then she becomes perfect bride. But she stands in a kind of unique position to the church. She's a member of the church as the perfect bride, but she's also mother of that same church. And then you see that that Old Testament typology, especially with Solomon and Bathsheba, again recapitulated and recirculated, established under a new head, and then directed towards its proper goal. So it doesn't have the deviation and the sin, but it still is supplying the principle of this notion of the Queen Mother, who is truly mother of the Queen, and then she would be, by extension, mother of that king's offspring.
Yeah.
But she takes on the notion of New Eve at the same time in a spiritual mode as bride of Christ and the first exemplary member of the church. That to which all of the church is compared to, but she is not compared to the church because she's the first.
Incredible point you bring up there, Dr. Goff, and it does remind me of the fact that the imagery of Holy Mary as New Eve, where we look at Genesis chapter 3, we read the woman and the seed of the woman being at enmity with the devil, with that serpent, and then I'm reminded of the Queen Mother, the Queen of Heaven, Holy Mary. Clearly, you find multiple early fathers noting that Mary is the woman there in Revelation 12 with a crown in her head in heaven. And you bring up the language, the fact that she's the mother of the church. Well, you read about that woman whose child will rule the nations with a rod of iron. Yeah. We recognize you can definitely be viewed as Mary there. And then we read of her, well, her offspring are the members of the church. Yeah. And the connection with that figure as the woman of Genesis 3 is right there, because we read of, and number one, in Genesis 3 utilizes a particular Greek word. I'm pretty sure you're probably aware of it. The Greek word for enmity, indicative of mortal warfare in the Greek Old Testament. Well, what do we view in Revelation 12? The serpent of old after the woman, trying to devour the child. Incredible the way all of it does really connect.
Well, I think it's interesting too. There's a series of articles studying Apocalypse or Revelation chapter 12, as well as all of the major witnesses to this kind of absolute primacy of Christ in a Marian mode in the patristic tradition up through the early modern period by the Capuchin, the Franciscan Capuchin scholar Dominic J. Unger, and he wrote these back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. They're excellent, but I think what you see there is, and he brings out how saints and scholars like Lawrence of Brindisi, Saint Bernardine, very good, yes. Of Siena, St. Maximilian Kolbe, these people understand the relationship between Genesis 3 and Apocalypse 11, end of 11 into chapter 12, as a kind of telescoped presentation of a single kind of sempiternal moving into temporal event, wherein the cause or the motive or the occasion of the fall of Satan is actually before he understood the divinity of Christ, and perhaps even before he understood the internal, ineffable, and inaccessible Trinity in itself with clear vision, he saw this prophecy that is played out in the war in heaven in Apocalypse 12 as being subservient to the child that will rule the nations with the rod of iron.
Right.
And then he goes after the mother, right? And the child is captured up into heaven. But if you look at Genesis chapter 3, it's interesting if you see Genesis 3 and Apocalypse 12 in this relationship of this kind of telescoped relation, or a palimpsest, where there's one vision, it's the same reality, but there's an overlay. And so you can distinguish, but also see in unity. It's interesting that the serpent, as recorded in Genesis, first goes after the woman. because it's the woman that that brings forth the man child that will rule the nation with the rod of iron, and to whom Lucifer, Satan, will have to bend his metaphorical knee. And it seems like there's a sempiternal event in angelic time, or aviternal, excuse me, not sempiternal, aviternal event in angelic time that also flows into the order of salvation history, wherein there's this one vision that the angels are given, led by Satan, Lucifer, and they rebel against the obeisance and subservient to the woman and her son. And then in the garden, it's almost as though you see they've already made the decision. And when it works out in the garden, you see them attacking Eve as though she is the woman. And she is called the mother of all the living.
Sure.
But that's clearly a prophecy of the true mother of all the true living that really do receive the breathe in the spirit of supernatural life. So I think they're closely related. And I think it helps explain why the serpent went after the woman rather than, say, the man. I think it's because he misidentified this woman as the woman of Apocalypse 12.
Yeah, I think really great point you make there. And another thing that I grammatically, people have to admit that the very word that appears there in the book of Genesis for that enmity, that kind of warfare, it is for the child and the woman there. Clearly, it doesn't tell you, well, only for the child. Clearly, it has to do with both. Without a doubt, I agree with your interpretation there. Talking about a woman in the future.
Well, I don't know the particular term, but even the parallelisms as translated into English or reading it in the Latin, it says, I will put between you, I will place between enmity between you and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. And the enmity is the distributed, or the common point of linkage between the woman and the son, and the serpent and the serpent seed. So it's qualitatively the same enmity that's being spoken of that you've alluded to. And so if the son or the seed is of the woman is at perfect enmity, and it's the same enmity, well, it must mean the woman has perfect enmity.
Which would be very problematic if we try to argue that enmity was anything but perfect, because it's talking about the Messiah as
that's right.
A really, really good point that you bring up there.